Have you ever noticed how sometimes talking too much can become your worst enemy? How a few seemingly harmless words can come back to hurt you later? Matteo never really thought about that. To him, life was meant to be shared. After all, what's wrong with opening up about your dreams, achievements, and even struggles with those around you? He always believed that transparency was a virtue, a way to connect with others. But what he didn't realize was that the more he spoke, the more he exposed himself. And not every listener is there to support you. Some listen to criticize, others to envy, and some even to plot against you. The society we live in fuels this need for exposure. Social media, workplace conversations, family gatherings, there's always an opportunity to share more, show more, be more accessible. But is that really good for us? This is Matteo's story. The story of a man who learned, the hard way, that discretion can be one of the greatest forms of protection. That silence can be a shield against judgment, betrayal, and envy. And maybe, by the end of this story, you'll realize that sometimes, the best thing you can do is simply stay quiet. Matteo had always been a natural talker. Charismatic and open, he loved sharing his life without hesitation. At work, he spoke about his ambitions and future projects. With friends, he poured his heart out about his successes and struggles. With family, he detailed every step he took. To him, this was simply being honest and transparent. But he never realized that not everyone listened to his stories with good intentions. One day, during a casual conversation with coworkers, he mentioned that he was saving up to start a small business. His eyes lit up as he described every detail of his plan, the hope of building a better life. Some praised his idea, others showed interest, but one particular colleague just listened in silence, his expression unreadable. A few days later, that same colleague pitched a strikingly similar idea to their boss, securing a promotion that Matteo hadn't even known was up for grabs. That's when he started noticing something strange. Every time he shared something important, unexpected obstacles seemed to appear. What once felt like coincidence began to feel like a pattern. Time went on, and he still believed that opening up was an act of trust. But the truth was, the more he talked, the more his life seemed to slip through his fingers. Matteo started noticing a strange pattern in his life. Every time he talked about his plans, something went wrong. It was as if his ideas vanished into thin air before they could even take shape. His biggest disappointment came when he decided to invest his savings into a small business. He shared his excitement with friends and family, detailing every step, from choosing the location to the strategies he planned to use for growth. The initial reaction was positive, words of encouragement, some advice, even promises of support. But soon, something changed. Someone he had confided in, who had listened carefully to all his plans, opened a nearly identical business before he could, at an even better location. The frustration was overwhelming. Matteo felt betrayed, but he realized that the real mistake wasn't what the other person did, it was his own lack of discretion. The lesson was clear. Not everyone roots for your success. Some people see others' dreams as opportunities for themselves. From that moment on, a sense of unease settled in. Was he sabotaging himself by talking too much? Did he need to start keeping what truly mattered to himself? These questions began to echo in his mind, but he still had no idea just how much oversharing could impact his life in even more painful ways. Matteo didn't just overshare his plans and business ideas, his personal life was an open book as well. He believed that sharing his happiness with others was natural, especially when he started dating Anna. At first, everything between them was light and beautiful. But without realizing it, Matteo began exposing details of their relationship to friends and family. He talked about their conversations, their future plans, even their small day-to-day disagreements. In the beginning, it seemed harmless. But then, the opinions started pouring in. "She seems a bit bossy, don't you think?" a friend joked. "Be careful not to get too involved. You can't trust anyone these days," an uncle warned, as if trying to protect him. Matteo laughed off these comments, but the words lingered in his mind. Slowly, outside opinions began to shape his perception of the relationship. He started noticing things that had never bothered him before, creating doubts and insecurities. Anna, on the other hand, also felt the weight of this exposure. Small disagreements that should have remained between them became topics of discussion among friends and relatives. One day, she confronted him. "Why does everyone know about our problems before I even get the chance to work them out with you?" That was when Matteo realized the damage he had done. Without meaning to, he had allowed outsiders to interfere in their relationship. What should have been a bond between two people now felt like a show with too many spectators. Over time, the relationship weakened. The flood of opinions planted seeds of doubt, and what once felt strong turned fragile. In the end, what started with love ended in silence, a silence that should have existed from the very beginning. Matteo learned that some things need to be kept private. What is sacred should not be exposed, because not everyone has good intentions, and even those who do can unintentionally cause harm. But this wouldn't be the last time he learned that lesson. There was still another part of his life where oversharing would come at a steep price. Matteo always believed that being honest about his past was a sign of maturity. He never hid his mistakes, his failures, or the challenges he had faced throughout his life. Whenever he had the chance, he shared his experiences, thinking it was a way to show his growth. At work, he liked to talk about the struggles he had overcome. In casual conversations, he mentioned past bad decisions, believing that it made him more relatable and approachable. What he didn't realize was that not everyone saw his honesty in a positive light. One day, a promotion opportunity came up at the office. Matteo had all the qualifications for the position. But behind the scenes, some colleagues began to question his credibility. Is he really ready for that responsibility? Remember when he said he had financial problems, one of them pointed out. And what about that time he mentioned almost giving up on his career? That sounds like insecurity, another added. The very stories he had shared to highlight his growth were now being used against him. His past, one he had already moved on from, was becoming an obstacle in his present. When he found out that the promotion had gone to someone else, Matteo was stunned. He was more experienced, more qualified. So why wasn't he chosen? The answer came indirectly. In a casual conversation, he overheard a passing remark. The boss wants someone reliable, someone without so many uncertainties in their background. In that moment, everything clicked. He had handed over the very weapons that were now being used against him. It was a harsh realization. His transparency had turned into vulnerability. From that day on, Matteo decided that some things should stay in the past. Not everything needs to be shared, because not everyone is capable of looking at someone's journey with empathy. It was time to change. But as he would soon find out, some lessons are only truly learned when the pain becomes unavoidable. The turning point in Matteo's life didn't come from one big event, but from the accumulation of small disappointments. He started noticing a pattern. Every time he shared something, something went wrong. If he talked about a project, an obstacle appeared. If he spoke about his happiness, unexpected problems surfaced. It felt like the more he exposed his life, the more it slipped out of his control. But it wasn't until everything around him fell apart that he truly understood the power of silence. First, it was his business, which failed after someone more discreet and strategic copied his idea. Then, his professional reputation, damaged by stories he had shared himself. And finally, his personal life, which had turned into a minefield of opinions and outside interference. That night, sitting alone in his apartment, Matteo reflected on everything that had happened. For the first time, he realized he wasn't a victim of envy or malice, he was a victim of his own recklessness. He thought back to all the casual conversations, the details he had shared without a second thought, the people he had trusted too easily. And in that moment, he understood something crucial: not everything needs to be said. Not every plan needs to be announced. Not every mistake needs to be confessed. Not every moment of happiness needs to be displayed. Silence wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a sign of wisdom. That night, Matteo made a decision. From that point forward, he would be more selective with his words, more protective of his secrets, and more cautious with his dreams. Not out of fear, but out of respect for himself. Life had already given him all the warnings. Now, it was his turn to finally learn. In the months that followed, Matteo started acting differently. Where he once spoke without hesitation, he now chose his words carefully. When people asked about his plans, he would smile and change the subject. If they pressed for details about his personal life, he only shared what was necessary. At first, this change raised eyebrows. Some friends joked, "What's going on? You've been so mysterious lately." Others pushed a little harder. "Come on, Matteo, you've always been so open, what's with the secrecy?" But he had learned to hold his ground. He realized he didn't owe explanations to everyone, and keeping his plans to himself gave him a sense of security he had never felt before. Over time, he noticed something interesting: his life started flowing more smoothly. Unexpected obstacles became less frequent. Unsolicited criticism faded. And the achievements that once seemed to slip through his fingers finally began to materialize. Silence brought him peace. It brought him respect. It brought him strength. And that was when Matteo understood that success wasn't just about hard work, it was also about discretion. He no longer needed validation from others. He didn't need to announce every step he took. What truly mattered to him was now protected, because words once spoken can never be taken back, but words left unsaid can never be used against you. From that moment on, Matteo chose to live more privately. Not out of fear of others, but because he had finally learned to value himself. A wise man once said that the secret to happiness isn't having everything, it's knowing what to keep in silence. Matteo never truly understood that before, but now, it made perfect sense. He realized that discretion wasn't just a way to avoid problems, it was a path to a more peaceful life. By speaking less, he learned to listen more. By keeping his plans private, he was able to accomplish them without interference. By protecting his personal life, he built healthier, more genuine relationships. Silence didn't mean isolation, it meant wisdom. It was the difference between being exposed to the wind and growing deep, unshakable roots in the ground. And this lesson wasn't just for him, it was for all of us. How many times have we said more than we should and regretted it later? How often have we entrusted our secrets to people who couldn't keep them? How many opportunities have we lost because we revealed our plans too soon? If there's one thing Matteo's story teaches us, it's that not everything needs to be shared. What is valuable should be protected. What is important should be nurtured in silence. So before you share your dreams with someone, ask yourself, does this person truly want the best for me? Before revealing details about your life, think, does this really need to be said? Because real freedom isn't about saying everything that comes to mind, it's about knowing what deserves to be spoken and what is best kept within us. Now tell me, have you ever experienced something similar? Have you realized how silence can be an ally? Share your story in the comments, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, stories that bring reflection, wisdom, and faith into our daily lives. Remember, not everything needs to be said, but some lessons should be remembered forever.